So yeah, I will talk about building bridges and the headless future of Plone. Working on like what we call headless these days started 2014 in Sorrento in Italy, and during the keynote on the first day, you already heard like part of the story, right, around how like Plone REST API, Pastanaga, and all the other components like started. So I won't repeat that. I will try to provide you with like, I hope that this talk can be like more like maybe a roadmap than like a vision, because my ultimate goal is to like bring our vision into a reality, right? But first, I would like to share a few observations. Mobile is overtaking desktop. I already mentioned that on the first day, that there are more searches on mobile since 2015, that there are, in general, more mobile access on web pages than on desktop. That was already reflected in Plone 5 somehow. It's mobile ready, but our idea is with Pastanaga to really provide the best user interface for the best user experience for any device, right? The second observation is open source becomes mainstream or is mainstream, right? When Plone started, it was like the community and the project was, I think, pretty unique, because we were never controlled by the Plone community, or Plone the Software was never controlled by like one company, right? Plone was never like, I mean, there was Plone Solution at the beginning, but it was never like really one company that was dominating the community, right? And that's, I think, that's somehow unique. We also had like the Plone Foundation, but today, if you look at like the large open source projects, like you have like huge players like Facebook or Google that are open source stuff, and they're building like great communities, but it's like a different kind of open source community. But on the other hand, this involvement of those companies made like Plone made open source becoming more mainstream. So just one example, GitHub just published a study about contributions last year, and guess which project had the most contributors on GitHub? It was Microsoft, Visual Studio Code. I mean, Microsoft, right? Open source. I mean, it's like that's amazing. The third observation is we talked already a lot about that, but JavaScript is taking over. In the same study at GitHub, that's like the number of open pull requests by language, right? And JavaScript has double the time than the second language, which is Python, which is also really great, right? I mean, Python overtook Java on GitHub, right? But JavaScript becomes more and more important. And if you're a web developer in 2017, I think there's no way around like learning JavaScript, right? I mean, you can of course choose to become like just a backend developer, right? And then you can stick to Python. But I think if you're into web development and you want to like develop the full stack, you have to learn like a modern JavaScript framework, right? That's just a reality that we have to face, at least in my opinion. The first observation is that the web is everywhere. 5 to 10 years ago, web applications started to replace desktop applications, right? I recall visiting my uncle, who's a doctor at a hospital, right? And he showed me like scans from the human body, and I was like, "Is that a web application?" And he was, "No, it's Windows. I click here and then it opens, right?" But it was a web application. I mean, for like scanning huge amounts of, that's a huge amount of data, right? But it was a web application actually. So that was already like, I don't know, five years ago. And in recent years, we saw that web technology is taking over mobile, right? With technologies like Cordova, Ionic, React Native, NativeScript, and things like that. TOB reported in their index in 2017 that Swift is actually losing popularity. And in the report before that, they actually reported that Swift was like the highest ranking newcomer, right? And what they're writing is that the reason for that is that web technology is like taking over, like Cordova, Ionic. They didn't mention React Native or NativeScript, strangely. But I think that's what you see, right? That web technology is taking over web applications, mobile applications, and also you have a third vector, which is like desktop applications. So the web is coming back with technologies like Electron, right? You can the same as you can wrap a web application in Cordova to provide to distribute it as a mobile application. You can do the same with Electron to distribute applications on Windows, OS X, and Linux. So isn't it just like a great time being a web developer in 2017? I mean, the web is everywhere, right? It's used everywhere. Isn't it a great time to be like a JavaScript developer? Because JavaScript is everywhere, and the web is everywhere. So it's like, isn't that awesome? I mean, and open source is everywhere. I mean, major players are using open source. Like some of the largest companies in the world are like publishing open source, right? And it's everywhere. So the times we're living in as web developers is really exciting. I mean, I wish I was in my early 20s and I could like hack day and night on like all the cool stuff that is around, right? I mean, that's just great. I mean, but I mean, we could like see it in another way, right? I mean, we could complain out loud and like say like CMSs are dead, the CMS market is dead, like Plone is dead, and when I hear that, it occurs to me that like, I mean, our sector, like digital transformations everywhere, right? We're transforming entire sectors, right? We're making, I mean, think about like phone books or maps, right? I mean, the printed ones, right? I mean, they're just gone, right? And entire sectors of the industry are like completely changing, right? And usually if people then complain and say, hey, we're losing our jobs, right? Then what IT people usually do is, yeah, but it's more efficient, right? But on the other hand, if like we see in our sector like large changes, right, and we have to learn like new programming languages, new frameworks like every like a few years, right, or sometimes maybe every few months, right, we start to complain about that, right? I mean that's not the right thing, I think. I mean we expect other people to like transform themselves for the better, right? But if it happens to us, I mean, then we can't just say, no, I'm not going to like do that, right? That sucks. So I really think that we're living in exciting times, and that's a great time, like being an open source developer, a web developer, and a JavaScript developer. So you could ask, like, hey, if JavaScript, Timo, you're like telling us that JavaScript is so great, right? I mean, why don't you like just jump on that and go and try out a like JavaScript CMS or whatever, right? I mean, why are you like still sticking with Plone, right? I mean, that's a valid question that you could ask yourself. And I think Eric Brehol, I hope you went to Eric Brehol's talk, and if you went, I think hopefully he could convince you already. So I will just briefly go through my list, and I will not try to duplicate too much from Eric's talk. So what holds me back, right? Why do I just like go on like and using like a JavaScript CMS or write my own one? So first thing is Python. I just love Python. I mean, it wasn't my first language, but it was the first language that I like truly enjoyed like programming. I think Python made like lots of right decisions, and I still miss Python in every single line of JavaScript code that I write, right? I mean, it's just like JavaScript sometimes feels so clumsy, like, and in Python it's so elegant and easy. But JavaScript as a language is quite okay. I mean, I'm not using JavaScript for the language, right? I mean, if I could use Python in the browser, that would be like awesome, right? But that's not a reality. So I can live with JavaScript. It's fine. I'm using JavaScript not for the language, but like for the tooling, for the libraries, for the communities, for the speed, for the cool things that you can build with it, right? But I mean, I would prefer to like keep Python, right? So and right now I couldn't like imagine, for instance, to use like Node or on the back end, right? Because I think Python is doing a way better job. It makes things far easier. So I will personally I want to like stick with Python, and I will do that. Second thing is Plone the Community, right? that's usually the first thing that people mention if they're asked what's great about Plone, right? We all love the community. We all love to contribute to the community. And I think that's like what we have is pretty unique, right? In the last years, I went to many other conferences like Jenkins conference, CI conference, testing conferences, lots of JavaScript conferences. And every community is like different. But I mean, there's no place like Plone, right? I mean, yeah. So I just want to like share one observation about like the JavaScript community. I went to React Europe I think earlier that year, and it was like really an awesome conference. I went there alone, and I usually when you go alone to a conference, you need to start trying to like talk to people, and that usually takes some effort. But at that conference, it wasn't like that. I was basically talking to somebody else after every single talk, right? And it was easy to like talk to people, interact. Everybody was really, really friendly, really, really helpful. So it was like a great experience. And they had like, I think, 1,000 or 2,000 like attendees. So it was like a great conference. But then I went to the Sprint, like what I usually do, right? And there were like literally like 20 or 30 people showing up from like 1,000 or 2,000 people, right? And I mean, the Sprint was nice and everything, right? But if I compare that to Plone, right? I mean, our ratio is like far better, right? So people like show up to the Sprint. And when I talk to even like other people in the Python community, they always ask me, hey, Timo, how do you do that you just like invite people from all over the world and they will just come? I mean, some will even like pay for their flights and their accommodation, and they will just come and work with you on stuff. I mean, how do you do that, right? That's magic. But I mean, that's how we roll, right? And that's a great thing about the community. Next thing is Plone the Software. I'm doing consulting since like 8 or 10 years, and Plone is not the only system that I see, right? So I see many other systems, and I think I won't go too much into depth on that, but I think there are things in our software stack that are still pretty unique. The way we handle permissions, workflows, users. Eric mentioned traversal in his talk. Those are still like those are like great assets, right? And I think there's lots of things that we want to keep. The next thing is Plone the CMS. Eric. In his talk, sorry, Eric, for like citing you so many times, but he said like Plone is doing breadcrumbs since 2001, right? And that's really like catchy way of like putting it, because we know like the CMS market since like 15 years, right? And that's a huge asset, and you can see that you can see the value in that if you look at at JavaScript CMSs, for instance, right? Go out and try them out. I did that. And bottom line is, they're usually like they usually have like really awful like user interface. It's really nothing that I could imagine to like show to my clients, right? I mean, they have like great widgets and everything, and they have everything that's great about JavaScript, right? But I mean, the user interface is usually really awful, right? If you look at the headless CMS solutions, they have really like nice things like libraries and everything that you could imagine, right? But they really lack like what we consider basic functionality of a CMS, right? So that's not there. Even if I would want, I couldn't like jump off and like move to another system, because I wouldn't have like half of what I have now, or like maybe only like 10%, right? So we have lots of experience. The only thing that we have to like, I think, like prevent ourselves from is like becoming those like grandpas that are sitting on the bench and telling like younger people that we did this better already and we know how to do that and you're all doing it wrong, right? Because those like new JavaScript communities, they have like lots of energy, and I think we could like we need to like take that energy and like enjoy that, right? And take some of like the old thing that we have and take the new things as well. So, I mean, what do we now? On the one hand, we have like a stable and mature content management system. We have the community, we have the foundation, we have the software stack, right? That we want to keep, right? And I think we all agree that we want to keep that. On the other hand, we have like a really fast-moving front-end technology sector with JavaScript fatigue. Every like few months, there's a new JavaScript framework. Personally, I think things settled down on that. I mean, you have like the two large frameworks, React and JavaScript, and they're React and Angular. They're pretty stable, and they're also not that different any longer, right? I mean, even if you use Vue.js or something else, it's not too hard to switch any longer. Actually, like React and Angular share a lot of things. It's really like which one you take, for instance. It's just more a matter of if you prefer a framework or a library, or if you prefer a TypeScript over like plain JavaScript and those kind of things. But it's not like one or the other, and they're completely different, right? I don't think that this is true. So how do we handle that? On one hand, like stable basis, and we want to provide our users with like something stable that they can rely on for like 10 years, right? If you look at most of our clients, at least that's true for Kit Concept, they're thinking in terms of like 5 or 10 years, right? I mean, I sign contracts where I say we want to like do that for the next 10 years, right? I mean, that's a lot of time, and lots of things will happen in that time, but if you look at the past of Plone, we were able to provide that, right, on like a stable and mature basis. So, again, how do we handle that? I mean, the answer is Plone REST API. As I said, that started like 3 years ago, and Plone REST API is a RESTful hypermedia API for Plone. I won't go too much in depth on that. REST stands for representational state transfer. The basic idea is that you leverage HTTP, that you use HTTP accept headers, status codes to communicate. It's basically, the basic idea is really just using HTTP. So if you know the HTTP standard, then you know how like REST works, basically. And the hypermedia component is like a bit of an academic like concept, so you don't need to like understand that too much like in depth to use the REST API. The basic idea is just that you have hyperlinks that you can basically follow like a human user would, right? You start with an entry point in your API, and then you see what you can do, which links you can follow, and that's basically it, right? So it's not too hard. If you put it like a bit further, then it becomes hard. But the basic idea is pretty simple, actually. And our idea with Plone REST API is that's actually like, it's an abstraction layer, it's an API, of course, but that's somehow some kind of like bridge that allows us to separate the front end from the back end, right? So if we have a fast-moving front end and like a stable, and we want to have a stable and mature back end, we need them to communicate somehow, right? And we need an API for that, and that's what Plone API provides. So stability on the back end that we need, and the flexibility on the front end that we need today and that we will need in the future, because I think we can't assume that like in 2 or 3 years the JavaScript world will look the same as today, right? So what's the current status of Plone REST API? It's stable, around since 3 years. It's used in production. As I said, for Teamwork is using that for their OpenGava platform. Code Syntax is using that. VNC is using that for their VNC Lagoon stack. We are using that at Kit Concept in production. Ridling is using that from Erico Andre, who just arrived this morning. And he gave a talk in Boston, actually, last year about Plone REST API. And I asked him, Erico, so I mean, what are your wishes for a Plone REST API, right? I mean, what are you missing? And he basically said, nothing. All good, great. I mean, and that was like last year, right? And since then, a few things happened. We had the Beethoven Sprint in Bonn, organized by Kit Concept. We added quite a few missing endpoints, sharing, vocabularies, copy, move, translation. And after that, we added like a history endpoint. We added expansion. We added a TAS endpoint. So I would consider Plone REST API to be feature complete right now. We're using that internally to build an Angular 2 application on top of Plone, and it has like all the functionality that Plone has. So I think we're really feature complete. The only reason why 1.0 is not out is because I was just so lazy, or I didn't have time to do that. So there are really only like a few things missing, and then we are good to go with 1.0. I also wrote a plip for including Plone REST API and Plone for 5.2. So that will happen pretty soon, and I don't see like any like major problems on that front, right? So we can get back to our vision with Plone REST API stable. So our vision was like not only building bridges between the front end and the back end, but also building bridges between like different approaches. I already said that we have like different kind of clients, right? We have clients that have like a long-lasting strategy, but we also have like needs for like creating modern solution, right? So I guess we have to make sure that all those like possible projects are covered by our strategy. So one of our like ideas of like what do you do if you do a Plone 5 site today, right? And you want to like create a few new widgets, right? Then you can use Plone 5.x. It's a stable release. You can use Plone REST API to build modern solution on that. Actually, our main project is still on Plone 4.3 with Plone REST API and this Angular front end, right? We're about to move to Plone 5, but we're using that, right? We are using the existing solution and just build something new on Plone something new on top of Plone with Plone REST API. So we can do that today, and thanks to Nathan, we also had a flip for including React into core, so you can use React in core if you want that. So that's our like stable branch, right? And then if you want to go with like the full with a full modern JavaScript front end like React or Angular, you can just build that on top of the existing one. We could even start to implement like Pastanaga on top of that. And the third like branch is like the long-term vision, which is like Guillotina, right? Because our idea is to like somehow keep the API in sync, which will be incredibly hard. But I mean, it's doable if people want to put like effort into that, right? So we have like 3 branches, and the idea of Plone REST API is like that it allows us to build bridges between those branches as well, right? So you can switch from one to the other if you want. You can start like creating React widgets in standard Plone. You can create libraries for maybe React or Angular that run on Plone REST API. And at some point, if we build like rich front end libraries and applications, then we could even at some point switch Plone with Guillotina, right? I mean that could be possible. So that's our vision of building bridges. But visions and like telling stories is fine, but to be honest, every time we prepare a talk about all this, I mean, Victor often asks me, shall we really say that? I mean, like going on a stage and like telling people about all those things that we have, right, or that we will build. I mean, everybody will expect us like to do that, right, or somehow make that happen, right? I mean, it's of course not like the 2 of us or 3 of us, but like they somehow will expect that to happen, right? So on one hand, we're trying to like we're using visions and stories to convince people to jump on that, right, and help us with that, and then make that possible. But I would like to provide like as I said, a roadmap or a way how we can make that happen, right? And we already thought about that. So who here would like to have Pastanaga like today, right, and use it? Okay, so I mean, how should we approach that? I mean, how should we make that happen? I mean, should we start to build it like that? I think, yeah, people are laughing here, but I mean, I think we have like a history in the Plone community, like that some of the projects that we have and that are like around for quite some years. I think the main problem with them was that we were really building them like that. I mean, that's like from Henrik Knieberg. About from his blog post, Making Sense of MVP, and I think everybody, I mean, and everybody wants to like develop like that, right? I mean, if you, the idea of like having a minimal viable product is that you provide your user with something usable right from the start, right? You don't build something over a longer period of time, but you build something small that has value to the user that they can use and like try out, and that fits very well with like the agile approach, right? That you iterate over time and improve the product. And I sincerely believe that if we want to make Pastanaga, Plone REST API, a new front-end library, if we want that, I mean, I'm talking about like the full application, right? Not about the SDKs and stuff, right? What we have, for instance, for Angular 2. I'm talking about really the full application of like full Plone written in a modern JavaScript front end. So if we want to have that, then I sincerely believe that we have to start with a minimal viable product. We have to think about how can we create something that adds value to users today, and not only users but also companies, right? That allows companies to start with that, right? To say, yeah, we will build that in a new site which is maybe smaller in React, right? Because we have the basics and we know what we have to like put on top of that, right? But that's better than having like a product that where maybe like 30% of the functionality is not really working, right? Then it's hard to estimate. So I want that skateboard. So what do we need to like have that skateboard? Of course, we need login, right? Otherwise, the user can't log in. We are a CMS, so nobody can like add any content if we don't log in. So we will need a login, right? I mean, that's obvious. Second thing is content editing. I'm talking about like basic content editing, adding, editing, deleting, and navigating, right? That might sound easy, but as I said on the first day, I think it's not. Because what we're aiming for here is bringing Plone back to where it belongs, to make Plone stand out when it comes to the editing experience, right? I really want that people will start using our MVP and think, wow, that's like the greatest like user experience that I had in the CMS, right? I know that this is like a high goal, right? That's not easy to reach, but I want us to like put as much effort into that user story as we can, right? And I also want us to like then iterate over that, right? If we have an MVP, then like I want us to like iterate over that and improve that, and really like the idea of like the idea of Albert to focus on the UI level. I want us to like focus on that, on those users, right, and that user story. So if we have that, then another thing that I would like to have is like image upload, right? Because that's something that you need if you want to. Like if you think even of a small website, if you just have like text and no image upload, that would suck. And I want to make it really easy, that you can just drag and drop things, that you have like a few options that you can see there how to put them. And one thing that we have to solve on a technical level is this idea of like folderish content types, right? Because I want a problem that we have is we built the kit concept block, we built that in Angular 2, right? I thought that's like, I knew that this was a stupid idea, but I wanted to do that. And one of the problems is we create like a medium-like editor, right? So you can drag and drop the image, and it works. The problem is just like the image is huge, right? Sometimes you have 8 megabyte image or something. You put it there, and then like your block is broken, right? Because we don't have image scaling, something that you take for granted in Plone, right? I mean, you just upload an image, and sure, I mean, you get all the scales, and that's all there, right? But if you build something from the scratch, it's not there, and you have to like build that stuff, right? Of course it's internal, like in the back end, but you don't have it. So I want us to have like a folderish page object, and then like drag and drop that image there, and then Plone does its magic, uploads that to that page-like folder, and stores it and provides the user or the front end with the scaling, right? So those are like the main functionalities. But I know that we're talking about an MVP, and we should like try to focus, but there are a few other things that I think are essential even for an MVP to make it like production ready and usable. One is performance. I guess you all know the like statistics, right? That Google reported that like 53% of mobile site visitors abandon the page if the page takes longer than 3 seconds to load, right? I already said that mobile is taking desktop, right? Actually, Dennis Mishunov, who will give another keynote here, wrote a great blog post on Smashing magazine Why Performance Matters, and he covers there the psychological aspects of that. But I think that's really essential. And if you look at at modern like page builders, they really put a lot of effort into performance. If you look, for instance, at Gatsby.js, that's a static site generator written in React, right? What you basically get out of that is if you build that, if you build a site on with Gatsby, you get a PWA that does all the latest like performance optimizations that you could like imagine, right? So you get just get that out of the box. And I think if we want to compete with, we don't want to compete with Gatsby.js because it's like just another sector, right? It's for smaller sites. They don't have like CMS features and all that kind of things. But I sincerely believe that we have to provide users with a great like out of the box performance, right? That's really essential. So we will have to use like Webpack and do like the usual optimization, right? Bundle to reduce the bundle size, use tree shaking and all that kind of things. I think we have enough experience on that front to build something good there. We will also need like server-side rendering to increase the performance, which also has implications for the second thing that I would need is like SEO. That's also something that we saw on our Angular 2 blog from Kit Concept. We couldn't make server-side rendering work. Like that was like a year ago or so. I know Eric made that work, and he said that it works perfectly, but that didn't really work out for us. We came up with a solution, but I think that's really essential for if you want to use the new Plone Pasanaga minimal viable product on a real site, Google needs to find that site. If you want to use that for like even a small portal, right, that's just essential. And we have to like make sure that this works. I think Eriko Andre will also give a talk about Angular 2 and how we optimize that, so that will be really interesting. So that's my minimal viable product, right? I mean, the three like functional requirements: basic content editing, login, and image uploading, then SEO and performance. And I think that's something that's in my opinion doable, and I think that would provide like a real a value to users and also to companies that want to build something on top of that. So on GitHub we had a list of user stories for that minimal viable product. So we basically know what to do, right? You can check it out at github.com/plone/pasanaga. So question is now how do we like bring that into reality, right? We have a vision, we have a roadmap. So how do we do that? We'll have an open space today at 12:45 to 1:30. That's a slot right before the lunch. We'll do an open space, and we can like talk about how we could make that happen. Of course, we have like the standard things that we can do, right? We can organize sprints. We will have a sprint at the conference. Kit Concept will organize another Beethoven Sprint in early next year, I guess. There will be many other sprints, I guess. One good way is of course having real world projects, because I mean that's what drives open source communities as well, right? If you have a real world project and you can put billable hours on open source projects, if your clients allow you to do that. So if you have any project and you want to use Plone REST API or Plone React or the Angular SDK, please talk to us about that, right? I mean, ask us questions and we can like help you to make that work. And if those real world projects allow us like to contribute something back to the Plone community, that would be awesome. At Kit Concept, we have a few projects in the pipeline where we'll definitely do that. And of course contribute like everything back that we do. Another thing is of course like sponsorship. That's something that we can maybe discuss at the open space if we can do something on that front. That was basically it. So I will briefly just summarize. So with Plone REST API, we have a stable and mature platform to like build bridges between the different systems, between Guillotina and Plone React, Angular SDK, Plone REST API, and existing Plone versions. I think Plone's future is really bright if we combine the knowledge that we have and the stable backend platform and adopting like new frameworks. And just reuse the stuff that is that's already out there, right? Just take our experience and look at the solutions that are there and adapt them to fit our needs, right? I think that's the way to go. Pasanaga UI is awesome. I love it. I think that's a great opportunity and great way for us to really improve the user experience and how people see Plone. And I hope I could provide you with like a roadmap that we can make happen together, and that's doable. And yeah, like I said on the first day in the keynote, the great thing about the Plone community is that you start with an idea and people just like come and contribute, and it's like an effort from like many people. And yeah, let's get together, let's do Plone magic together. And thank you for listening.
Yes, thank you, Timo. Great talk. Do you have any questions? We have some minutes left. Is there any hands? Okay. A question from me.
Yes.
If it comes to Pastanaga UI, is there a website where you can already see something?
We have the domain. Yeah, that's one of the things that we're actively working on, assembling a web page that runs on Pastanaga and Plone REST API. We're working on that. I hope we can continue that on during the sprint. We have the GitHub page where there's all the information, right? But I think that's really important that we have that we show that we have a page where people can go, where we show our roadmap idea, what we have to do, right, so that people know how they can contribute, right? I know that's not enough to go on a stage and say, hey, contribute, right, and then like people have to find and fiddle their way through. You have to like show people exactly what they can do to contribute, right? And that's the intention of the Pastanaga IO website. But yeah, we didn't have much time to work on that. So if you want to work on the Pastanaga IO website, then come talk to me or come to the sprint or the open space.
There's one more question.
Yes, thank you. It's a very interesting way of building the future in Plone, but I was wondering about, you were talking about search engine optimization, and now I've been working with a site built in JavaScript myself, and yes, the problem was that the search engines are simply not seeing it, so that it's not being indexed, any of the content. That's okay in that case, we could live with it, but I was wondering how you actually do to make it work.
Yeah, so I would really suggest to go to Eriko's talk, because I think their solution is based on Angular 2. Eriko, are you here? There. So Angular 2 or Angular 1? 2 and 4. Yeah, okay. Okay, so if you're on Angular 2, you can use server-side rendering. Both Eriko and Eric Brehold made that work. If you are on React, it's also easy. You can just use server-side rendering. And if you're on Angular 1, it might be hard. Then you need some like pre-rendering service that provides Google with the content of the page. Because if you're using Angular 1, then Google will just not see that. I know they announced that they can actually crawl JavaScript now, but this is just not true. I mean, from my experience, if you have an Angular 1 application, Google's just not seeing anything. But yeah, I think if you're using a modern JavaScript front-end framework like React or Angular 2, it's not too hard any longer.